The views and opinions of this program are those of the host, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you by Growmark FS. Keeping up with the latest in ag is a challenge, to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic, grain, and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. We have plenty to discuss here in the market trade as we wrapped up the final full week of July, a volatile grain market. We have a lot of economic news to dive through. We saw a stock market on a tear to end the week after we've had the Fed meeting and more inflationary data, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot to unpack here, and throw on top of it the Russia-Ukraine situation. All of that and more will be discussed here today, I'm sure. We're joined by our good friend Tommy Grisafi with Advanced Trading Inc. and Ag Bull Media. Tommy, it is great to have you back on Market Talk again, sir. I hope you're doing well.
Thanks, Jess. I am down here in the bunker and just grateful to be in America. I tell you, I watched that YouTube this morning of Peter Zian, and he pretty much, if what he's saying is true, he's saying Ukraine is out of the grain export business. Now let's go over a little math, and these are things I just learned today. How I didn't know this, I don't know, but there's a lot of things I don't know. Number one, the way the rail is, the train tracks are in Ukraine are totally different in how they are in other countries. And that's because that's the part of Ukraine that used to be part of Russia. So it's kind of like little kids have a Lionel train, and that Lionel won't fit on another scale of track. So I also learned that it's 12 to 15 times more expensive to move the grain the way they're going to have to. So the grain would go to these giant ports. They'd put it on a ship. It'd float away. As we all know, Ukraine was a great exporter of grain and a great producer of grain. Now that grain needs to be trucked to a new rail site, put on a train, brought to a foreign country, offloaded off that train, put on the proper train with the proper tracks, and then sent all the way over to the other side of the country. Nothing about that sounds easy, Jesse. Nothing.
No, nothing about that sounds easy. Well, and to that point as well, that video you watched this morning from Peter, a comment that I got on my YouTube channel as well, and I know this, you mentioned this was in Peter's video. What happens if Ukraine becomes a net importer, say in 2024, of commodities? Yeah, I know farmers there have had trouble planting, and it felt like early in the week here this past week that the trade was really picking up on the concern about infrastructure heading into next year, beyond, et cetera, et cetera. And then by the end of the week, it almost felt like in the grains, we kind of just whistled by the graveyard, so to speak. It took some profit. But I mean, some of those scenarios are pretty scary if you think about them, Tommy. What happens if Ukraine does become a net importer by next year?
Well, the USDA would have to definitely adjust some sheets. I imagine there's private analysts are usually a little bit ahead of, not usually, they're much ahead of the USDA. I'll have to ask our research department, Advanced Trading, to back into those numbers, and that'd be very interesting. I've also talked to research and said, God, everything I see in grains looks so bearish, and then they explain that scenario, assuming it rains, the weather cools down. So if the heat moves away and adequate rain happens, we're going to produce some bushels here, and exports are still poor. If they become a net importer, what that's doing, and that's a great question, Jesse, is it's forcing the whole world to just erase Ukraine from the grain business. And what's going to happen is the whole world's going to go in the grain business. And eventually, in the next few years, that ground will become productive again, whether it's Russian ground, Ukraine ground, who knows who's going to, what that country and that ground's going to be farmed as. Of course, as you'd mentioned earlier, huge financial burden on these folks in Ukraine. How can they go plant next year's crop when they can't even sell this year's crop? That's a real problem. So a lot of math to work into, and we'll see. Of course, I think in the end, in years to come, the world's really going to ramp up production. And as all the acres that can in the world go into production, we're going to have a heck of a bear market in a few years. But we don't have it today. We had incredible volatility in corn, wheat, beans, especially corn and wheat. corn went down to say the 525 level and right back up to the 547 level. Unbelievable move. 22-cent rally in corn within a few hours this morning. That's a big move for when not adequate, but there. See, I'm a little messed up, Jess. It rained another inch here in Valparaiso, Indiana today. So I keep thinking it's raining everywhere. So all the folks watching who aren't getting rains, I apologize. But I literally woke up at 5 this morning and went and shut my sprinkler off because I said, why would I be that guy who runs his sprinklers while it's downpouring? Not everyone's been blessed with these rains, but the temperatures are cooling down. We're going to be 97 degrees here today. And we're going to be in the low 80s tomorrow, and we have highs in the 70s next week. That's not bad for finishing up that corn crop. Of course, we have the whole month of August to worry about that bean crop, Jess.
And I've seen a few differing forecasts as we get into August as well. Most of them are trending wetter and cooler, but I've seen a few that are contradicting that and saying, well, everyone's going to be dry except the northwestern, northern corn belt. So to your point, August going to be a very key month specifically for that soybean crop. You know, we always say corn's made in July, beans are made in August, Tommy.
Absolutely. I wonder if weathermen trade. I mean, to be able to predict the weather for the corn and bean crop would be so powerful. I know when I was a young man on the floor of the Board of Trade in the corn pit, we used to turn around and watch Skilling talk about the weather. Now, you know how Skilling's other brother was that Jeff? He was the head of Enron. So there's our good Skilling doing the weather that all the traders are watching. Then there was the bad Skilling with Enron. Little bit of history there, Jess.
Yeah, a little bit of history there. Just thinking about all this volatility, thinking about the Ukraine situation, and we'll get into the economy here in a minute. But just your overall thoughts here, Tommy. Grains, corn, beans, wheat, even. I mean, with the volatility we've seen, I have to think there's been yet another opportunity for farmers to lock in some sort of profit or something, make some sort of move if they haven't done enough already. I know there could be concerns about, I don't know how much crop I have, but talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts with all this volatility, but this recent rally feels like another opportunity here once again for farmers?
Yeah, explosive rally earlier in the week in wheat. If you're not selling wheat when it's limit up, then you're not a hedger, you're not a protector, you're just someone who sells grain when you need money. Unless you know something I don't, but when wheat goes up 55, 60 cents in a day and the world's not running out of wheat, that's an actionable day. We had some actionable days in corn and beans. Of course, the bar is high for this 52 bushel per acre in beans and in the high level of corn, call it 180, 181. I don't think anyone thinks we're really there. Even call it 176 yield in corn. We're going to need a lot of good weather to finish up that. But this volatility has been opportunity. I think farmers are still complacent. The biggest thing I'm seeing that's really going to come when the snowflakes fall is just the admitting of how much interest rates have went up and how that works back into mathematically talking about carrying grain, storing grain, spreads, basis, all those words. The easy way to say it is, do you want to take your grain, turn it into cash, or do you want to store and ignore? And a bushel of grain turned into cash could be paying down operating, which is going to run around 9, 10, 11%, or a bushel of grain could possibly depreciate in value, and that would be very dangerous to the farmer's balance sheet.
Very true. Hold that thought about the cost of money and interest rates. I want to get to that in a second. One other note, though, I'm thinking about in grains, soybeans, August soybeans, we saw fall some about $1 Thursday and Friday combined. But you look at crush margins, they still look fairly attractive here in the U.S. Any thoughts on that, Tommy?
Yes. August soybeans are for adult swim only. It's the very, very, very end of the crop as we come into those bushels coming into the Delta. And I did talk to my friend Kurt at Advanced Trading, Kurt Struber, and I said, can you educate me a little? Can I sell August beans from my own account? They're going up 40 cents a day. I wish I would if I didn't. Pretty much what he said was, if you're not an elevator who really has this grain, who really has this on the river, on that, getting ready for first notice day, don't mess around with August beans. A few years ago, I looked at a chart, or maybe Karen had posted a chart. I think August went over $2 over SEP or over Nove. So this
Mhm.
it can do anything it wants. It's Adult Swim. There's better futures contracts to trade than August. It's as we like to say, well, it's not our favorite one to trade. Stick with the liquidity. Speaking of liquidity, I did write my notes, but I can't see them because I took my glasses off, Jess. Speaking of liquidity, open interest at the Chicago Board of Trade is down in corn, beans, wheat, cattle. The markets are tired. They've traded. I just noticed someone posted we're 500 and some days in the Ukraine war. People are tired. We're coming into August. As you know, most of Europe doesn't like to work in August. I don't know when they work anyway. I don't know if you have any European viewers, but their work ethic in August isn't exactly stellar. And hedge funds by now, they've either made their money or not. They're either trying to get caught up or just add a little bit to profit. So people hit the gas real hard on trading in Jan, Feb, March. Then they are either up money or not. And by August, if you're not up good money, you got to back off. If you are up good money, you definitely want to protect those profits. So the air's getting thinner. These market moves are incredible. That's not to say there's not opportunity, but it's very important, folks, to know that open interest is down. And even if you see an explosion like we did in wheat this week, open interest didn't move much. That's a very bad sign overall for what people think of the futures and options market.
We're having a conversation today with Tommy Grisafi from Advanced Trading Ag Bull Media. Tommy, let's talk inflation. Let's talk the economy. You made the comment earlier about interest rates going up, the cost of money, figuring that into our balance sheets on the farm and ranch. We've had a lot of economic data this past week. We saw more on Friday. We, of course, had the Fed Wednesday, a 25 basis point rate hike. That was pretty much as expected by Wall Street, it seemed like. And it feels like Wall Street kind of had this little euphoria to end the week. But as we peel back the numbers, peel back the onion here on inflation, Tommy, educate me. What's your thoughts on where things stand right now?
Sure. It's not going away anytime soon. And when you look at how crude oil is trading above 80 today, and you look at just the verbiage of the Fed, they said it could be all the way out till 2025 till they get to where they want to be back in that 2.5% rate. We're still 3.5%, 4% inflation. In my opinion, I feel like inflation's creeping back up. So we have a couple really interesting things happening. Imagine you have $1 million. If you just have $1 million and nothing to do with it, you can put it in a CD and make 5%. You could put it in the stock market, which the Nasdaq's been hot, which is extremely risky to be buying at these levels. It's always extremely risky to buy or sell anything, but at these levels, it feels really expensive. So conservative people can make 50 grand per million. Aggressive people can buy stocks, and the commodity markets have had a heck of a run. Look at bean oil, look at crude, look at gold and silver today. They're all popping back up. Extreme moves in the dollar. To answer your question, that was a great question. Inflation is not going away, and us people, young, old, poor, rich, we're going to have to adjust it. Nobody does better during an inflationary period than the rich because they own assets and assets inflated. So the rich have never been richer, my friend, and the poor have never been poorer, regardless of what you hear a politician say. Most people are elected officials that come in with a low net worth. And from what I understand, they leave with a high net worth. Back to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the comments there, Tommy. And before we let you go, real quick, I didn't ask anything livestock related. We had a pretty decent day, cattle and hogs. Any thoughts as we wrap up the protein sector on the week?
Yeah, nice pork party. The hog market, from those lower 80 levels we had a few months ago, we've come out of that. I've tried selling hogs from my own account. It hasn't worked. I know several people hedged aggressively in live cattle, in feeder cattle. The air's gotten very thin, although we see them trade up a lot during the day in the lives and fats. With any boost up in corn, you see that market pull back. So I think these are very hedgeable levels. Of course, I don't know that there's enough futures and options at the CME group to get all the cattle in the world hedged up. Actually, I know there isn't. So
Yeah.
do what you can do, whether it's government insurance or anything else. Get protected in these meets, because when the party's over and the music stops, make sure you have a chair to sit on, Jess.
Great stuff. Tommy, if folks want to reach out to you there at Advanced Trading, Ag Bull Media, get some thoughts on marketing and more, how can they reach you, Tommy?
Sure. You can go to the Advanced Trading website. Just click through the brokers. You can find me, send me a direct message. Of course, we always love people listening to the Ag Bull podcast. We have interesting people on, and hopefully in the next few weeks, I'll catch up to you and have you on the show, Jess.
I will always jump on the show with you, Tommy. We'll flip the roles and you can interview me, and I'll welcome that for sure. Tommy Grisafi, Advanced Trading, Ag Bull Media. Thanks for the time, my friend. Have a great one. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, sir. Thank you.
That's going to do it for the show today. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great weekend.